Do you all see this live on YouTube button? Good. Great. Okay. Hi guys. Welcome to Tinted Tales, our first online edition of our journal, Tint Journal. We're a literary magazine for people and writers who write in English as their non-native or second language. And we've already had a physical meeting before, so this is not the first time we're doing it online. Yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for dropping in. You can find out more about our journal on www.tintjournal.com. And I'm the editor-in-chief and the founder of the journal, and I'm super excited to introduce you to all the writers soon. But first to my co-host, our poetry editor. So here's John.
Hey everybody, I'm John. I'm the poetry editor for Tint. And we're really excited to be presenting you with some lovely authors tonight who have some great works. Some of them have been published with us before, and other ones this is their first time reading with us, so we're really excited.
Okay. Great. So you see, we're just getting used to technology here, so please be patient with us. This is the first time we're doing this. Yeah, and so I will briefly present to you all the writers in the running order. So first of all, here's Caroline Smaja. Then we've got Alexandra Maggiaro. Next one up is Francisco Serrano. And then we've also got an open list spot, Milan, who will join us tonight. He's not been published yet at Tint. Next one up is Martina Braunecker. Then we've got Vanu Sun. And last but not least, Richard Cho. Awesome. So I'd say let's just jump right in. And to do that, we've also got a very, very cool musician for you. So let me introduce you to Kati, who will just get us in the mood and play a few songs of her.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's doing great. The first song I'm gonna play is called Art Thou Lost at Sea. And on a plane makes at the stars shore, though I'm flying all night long. 2,000 miles till the ship came down, and I realized the right when it was gone. But on a car took a ride to you was the only thing left to do. After way out, our wheels came down, and I'm sitting on the streets, nothing to do. Now when I darling lead I life down lost not soul. I have no compass with me to rest my broken bones. Have I ever managed to lie to say it's too much? Why should I ever make it out of this messy coast? What can I finally reach the shore? But if the sails broke, the wheel comes starting clean. I saw the windies come, made the sea our home. And if the sails broke, the wheel comes with me. Ask me where I'm going to. You ask me where I was from. The boots drove me straight into your arms. That's why I said, I guess now I'm with you. So if you, darling, like me, ever lost at sea, just take this compass with you to rest your broken bone. And if you ever manage to lie the sails too close, why should you ever make it out this messy coast? Look at your finding reach their shore. And if the sails broke, the wheel can stand your feet. I saw the windies come, made the sea our home. Because baby, you'd rather tend to stay the same. Rather way to new world than some 90 on the shore. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We surely enjoyed that. And before we come to our first reader of the night, I want to highlight that we've got a little special giveaway for you guys, which are Tint Journal bookmarks, so that you know what I'm talking about. These are our little Tint Journal bookmarks, and they've also got some quotations on the back side. And to all of you watching tonight, we want to give away one of those. The only thing you have to do is just briefly tell us how many nationalities we've already published at Tint. Little hint, if you look up our social media channels, you'll briefly find that. So send us an email, info@tintjournal.com with the correct answer, and then the bookmark is on your way. Cool. So I'd say we jump right in, and I'm super happy to present to you the first writer tonight. Her name is Caroline Smadger. Her first language is French, and she's been published in Tint with her essay Puppy in spring 20, so our latest issue. You can read that on our website. And here's Caroline.
Hello, everyone. Good evening or good night to those of you who are in Europe, and good afternoon to people in California and in the West. The first thing I'd like to do is thank Lisa very much for publishing my piece in Tint Journal, and also for setting up this virtual reading, which is certainly a first for, I think, all of us. So today, what I'd like to read are two unpublished pieces, and they're flash pieces. One of them actually echoes Puppy, so that's one reason why I chose it. It's a nonfiction flash, and it's called Heritage. Heritage. In my 30s, I developed a near fascination for my genealogy. My parents carried me to France in a wicker basket like little Moses. Soon after our departure from the land our ancestors had inhabited for centuries, the big synagogue in Tunis was burned to the ground. No records of our history were left. While my mother took me to Tunis and showed me the house her father built, the paternal side of the family remained a blur. My sister and I were raised with no tradition, which heightened the urge to dig up my roots. Someone directed me to the Family Search Center in Utah, with only slim results that left my hunger intact. After my father, gravely ill with emphysema, was rushed to the hospital in late 1995, my urge turned to obsession. I flew from San Francisco to Paris and spent my winter break at his bedside. My father was a born conteur. On days he was well enough, he indulged me with stories of his boyhood during World War II, the Nazi occupation of Tunis, when he and 12 other relatives all lived in a basement, his teenage years, and his prowess as a volleyball champion. Yet, aside from his own parents, he had little information about our ancestors. At the time, my grandmother was in her late 80s. A widow since 1979, she lived Avenue Paul Doumer in the same apartment she'd had for decades in the 16th arrondissement. You entered through a dark L-shaped hallway that gave into a dining room dominated by a large table made of cherry wood. To the right stood a secrétaire that I'd seen open whenever paper and ink were needed. As long as he was alive, my grandfather presided over that ritual. He turned the small key clockwise meticulously, and the desk would slide open with a squeak, revealing little aside from neat stacks of documents, a couple of fountain pens, erasers, and sharpened pencils. In spite of the sparseness, maybe because of it, that secrétaire seemed by far the most mysterious place in my grandparents' home. That December, I visited Mamie regularly, as always when I stayed in Paris. She was still capable of living on her own. She still did not let me help, not even to put the kettle on, and insisted on serving me coffee herself. A small, frail woman who ate like a bird, she, like Jewish grandmas the world over, considered it her mission to feed others. She never failed to set on the glass coffee table in front of me a plate of cookies and other treats that I barely touched. Contrary to the stereotype about Middle Easterners, however, she was an unsentimental, matter-of-fact woman. Mommy, next time I come over, could you tell me about your grandparents, your parents and all? I asked at the end of one visit. The request had been on my lips all afternoon, but I delayed bringing it up while we chatted about the cold outside, our immediate relatives, and my life in San Francisco. She peered into my face. Why? I just need to know. Why? She asked again. She kept staring at me with near reproachful eyes, as if my request had been frivolous. I was aware she viewed any dwelling on the past as sheer nostalgia. For a moment, intimidated at her resistance, I found no reply. Then I heard myself say, I teach US history to Americans, yet I don't know the history of my own family. Mommy did not respond, but her serious face registered a pause stripped of disapproval. She gave me a light nod. As soon as I took leave, I put our exchange out of my mind and spent the following week commuting to my father's hospital room. When I next rang my grandmother's doorbell, I heard the familiar shuffle of slippers and the snap of locks before she ushered me in. We exchanged a light kiss on each cheek, and I followed her into the L-shaped hallway. On all other visits, she'd first enter the tiny kitchen to her left to put water on for hot drinks, then invite me onto her living room couch. This time, she stopped in front of the secrétaire to the right. She opened it up, retrieved a pile of manila envelopes, and put them on the nearby table. Sit down, she said without looking at me. I knew better than ask why and sat next to her as instructed. Here. She slid a bunch of old photographs from the top envelope and put one in between us on the wood surface. It showed a man of indistinguishable age dressed in formal garb. This was my father, Sauveur Kisraoui. He was a rabbi and the director of a rabbinical school in Tunis. I was floored. So excited, I held my breath as she pursued. And this was my mother. A clamped jaw face stopped with a funny-looking hat stared back at me. She bore some resemblance to my grandmother. She was so short, her feet didn't touch the ground when she sat. What was her name? Mommy answered something incomprehensible. I recognized the guttural dialect spoken by Tunisian Jews. Comment? Well, at the time, ma fille, we all had local names. I gave her a puzzled look. After the French arrived in the country in the late 19th century, they offered the Jews citizenship. That's how we got French names. So you weren't born Eugénie? No, I was Jeannie. My mother didn't speak a word of French, only Judeo-Arabic. Mamie smiled. Actually, she almost didn't speak at all. She was so quiet and small, you forgot she was in the room. My grandmother and I spent the rest of the afternoon bent over gray and sepia pictures with scalloped edges, some barely larger than stamps, others the size of manila envelopes, squares, rectangles, odd shapes. My father's mother ruled over the household. We kids had to take the tram to school every day, but she made sure everyone had a hearty breakfast first, with homemade donuts dripping with honey, and I itched to jot it all down, names, birth dates, each person's particulars, but mommy would have balked. For now, I sat close to her, spellbound, studied each face, and inhaled her words while she introduced one ancestor after another in typically methodical fashion. At the start of each semester, I used to tell my US history undergraduates that knowing your roots helps ground you for life. In the space of one afternoon, my grandmother passed on to me a gift more precious than any gem she could have bequeathed. The second piece I would like to share with you could be called a prose poem, and I really don't mind whatever you want to call it. I wrote it as a flash fiction piece. Hunger. On the streets of El Vedado, my guts ache from emptiness. The Cuban sun scorches my naked arms. I walk beside Aunt Julia on the split cement that catches the tip of my sandals. For so many blocks, I stop counting before we reach a tienda, a store as vast as a warehouse and as desolate. A sad-looking man with a drooping mustache slouches behind the counter. And Julia asks if he's got eggs to sell. He gestures to the bareness around him. I have nada, except vermicelli. My eyes fall upon plastic bags filled with threads of yellow dough, piles of them everywhere, behind him, all over the floor. And Julia asks when he might get eggs. Mañana, perhaps, he shrugs. Today, only vermicelli. We turn around and walk all the way back to her house. I feel faint, not just because time has passed and we've been walking in the heat with no food in our bellies, but because I know there's nothing to look forward to, nothing in Julia's cupboards, in her refrigerator that will satiate me. Nada de nada. I only had 2 cups of black coffee since I woke up this morning. As we step back into the living room, Aunt Julia announces with a smile that borders on mischief, as if it were a joke, a private joke between the two of us. So no eggs, no potatoes, only bread. Do you want me to cut you some? It is yesterday's bread that comes in long oval loaves. People show the storekeeper, not a baker, how much they want to buy, and he cuts them a piece. It weighs close to nothing and tastes dry. I guess it's made of yeast, water, and salt with little or no flour. Yes, I reply eagerly. But what about you? You should have something too. She shakes her head with the same big smile. No tengo hambre. Hambre. I like that the Spanish word for hunger is only 1 letter away from the word hombre for man. Thank you.
Thank you. That was lovely. So it looks like Lisa had a bit of an internet issue, so I'm going to be taking over until she gets back. But for the time being, up next we have Alexandra Maggiaru, and she had a piece published with us in the spring 2020 issue, and you can find that in the poetry section. That's 3 Stages of Intimacy. And her first language is Romanian, by the way. All right, Alexandra, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if we're on the spotlight since we lost Lisa. I think Carolyn is still on the spotlight.
I am still.
We figured it out. Hi, everyone. So I'll be reading a piece titled The Docket. Glass. I am floating inside a blinding white box suspended in the sky. As I lean against the white window overlooking the city, my forehead touches the ice-cold surface. and I pull back. It feels like breathing glass in here. The heaviest of fogs has descended from the skies, and the skyscrapers look like fragile monsters against the horizon. Inside, the sterile atmosphere is unbearable. The fused light is streaming in cushioned waves, and yet the hallway is devoid of life. 2 stone benches, 2 white sealed doors, 2 broad white walls. The pristine cleanliness of the linoleum floors leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Place. When the phone rings, I move slightly to the side, wary of hidden cameras and microphones. I feel exposed here, I whisper, and I don't know where I am. They sent me to the 13th floor, but I can't find a docket. There's nothing here but crystal clear air. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice reminds me I should breathe in and wait till the doors open. The docket will be inside on the wall, right before the entrance to the immigration court. I am in the right place. Trees. It has been a while since I've contemplated what it means to belong. Perhaps I am taking for granted my right to breathe the air around me, to use the pavement under my feet, to lavish in the shade of trees, and to absorb all the natural sunlight of the day without asking any questions. Perhaps the trees here, with their twisted shapes and their heavy fruit, were not made for my enjoyment. And what of the trees of my childhood, stretching above my head like sheltering parasols as I placed my head on the humid soil, my hair blending with the wild grasses? Court. I sit on the very last bench, motionless, my hands gripping the files to my chest. The judge is aware of my presence, yet he avoids looking at me. He is seated behind a sumptuous mahogany desk, a clerk on his left side, and the Spanish interpreter on the right. The judge is very handsome, in the way unbreakable people are handsome. Above his head, a large seal displays a bald eagle clutching in its claws a handful of spears, a laurel leaf, and the US flag. 5 Latin words adorn the seal: Qui prodomina justitia sequitur. I wonder why the aggressive bird, a predator in its own right, would preside over a claim to absolute justice. I look around and I see perfect harmony between the solid wooden furniture and the blue plush carpet. Everything is well ordered, clean, almost royal. But I know this is merely the semblance of a court of justice. Here the law works in the interest of the powerful. Here I have entered an alternate reality. Video. The screen flickers intermittently and then produces a stable image. The man has his handcuffs removed. He takes a seat on a low chair and he crouches forward. All I see is a slanted image distorted by digital noise. Hola, he says, hopefully. The judge does not greet him back. He does not lift his eyes to meet the man's, and he does not indicate he has heard the man's voice. The judge is a closed vessel on a different journey across murky waters. He is busily engaged with the important work ahead of him, clicking away at invisible files and folders on his desktop. And then, all of a sudden, we are on record. Alien. When we entered this country, we were told we had become aliens in the eye of the law. We may have been human before, or at least persons with lives and families and histories, but we ceded this right when we entered, legally or illegally, and embraced the privilege of residing here. I look up the term alien in the thesaurus and I find foreigner, non-native, immigrant, emigrant, emigre, extraterrestrial, ET, Martian, Jovian, Venusian, and even little green man. I rub the skin on my wrists looking for the underlying shades of green. Voluntary departure. The man hesitates. He does not speak English, but he has the benefit of an interpreter. He tries to make his way through the judge's sentences, flowing through a recalcitrant field of legal jargon. He changes his mind. He does not want to take the relief of voluntary departure, even if it means he will remain imprisoned in a cage for another month. He does not own a passport. It was stolen from his car a long time ago. In detention, he cannot procure one without the help of an attorney, and attorneys are expensive. The judge tells him he does not qualify for voluntary departure, even if he wants to depart voluntarily. To be placed on a plane back home, he must have a passport. To have a passport, he must be released from jail. To be released from jail, he must have documents, and he does not. The man breaks down in tears. I watch a grown man cry. Me siento mal aquí, he says. Home. For some of us, it is something familiar, welcoming and comfortable, a sanctuary away from the raging noise outside, a space where we can extend our being thoroughly, filling in all the corners and the empty spaces with our breathing bodily warmth. It is a space where we flourish, and yet, for some of us, home is danger, tension, aggression, internalized abuse, and psychological damage. It is a space where we shrink and become very small. It is a space where we are invisible and full of scars. Dream. He lived with his wife and 2 children. He had a roof over his head, a job, hand-painted furniture, a swing attached to the tree in the backyard, a blue truck, a collection of old tin cans turned into an art project, a handful of books, a set of old china plates from the vintage store, a television, 4 chairs on the porch, and a table for meals on summer evenings. He wanted to go back to school and become a social worker. Yes, he did pay taxes. No, he did not commit any crimes. Removal. The judge asked the interpreter to translate his words carefully. He wants to make sure the respondent understands the consequences of his decision. Since the man does not qualify for family-based status adjustment, nor for withholding of removal, and since he very likely will not be able to obtain the necessary documents to qualify for voluntary departure, he will be ordered removed. This means he will be returned to his home country at the expense of the government right away. This also means he will be blocked from entering the United States for 10 years. Does he prefer to reschedule the hearing and hire an attorney to pursue alternative reliefs, or will he accept removal? The man tells him he cannot take being locked up anymore. He feels he is becoming ill. He fears for his own health. He worries about his children and his old mother. He wants this to be over and done with today. And so it is. Witnessing. My hands move uneasily over the forms. I enter data, alien numbers, respondents' legal representation and access to an interpreter, forms of relief available, decisions made by the judges. Precise and dispassionate legal terms plunge through the shell of my heart and leave unwanted traces of debris behind. I am overcome by a feeling of shame, as if I'm witnessing private secrets that should never be unveiled to strangers. What right do I have to be here and witness the humiliation of the human soul on such an overwhelming scale? And isn't this court setting, with its aseptic and monstrous bureaucracy, too painfully intimate? Drive. When I come out of the cavernous parking lot of the federal building, I am perfectly numb and dissociated from my surroundings. I drive away more out of habit, a vague instinct of survival buried in the pit of my chest. The streets look unfamiliar as they are, bathed in the cold afternoon light. Garbage floats here and there under the bridges, and there are abandoned shopping carts at street corners. I turn on a winding street and end up in the bowels of the industrial city. I am disoriented and exhausted, and it is this desolate picture of the city that finally makes me break down. I look at the devastated landscape, the unseemly industrial rigs and abandoned factories, toxic waste emanating from their midst. This is by all means an uninhabitable land. I stop the car at the edge of the water, place my head on the driving wheel, and I let anxiety flood my body in waves. Thank you.
Alexandra, thank you so much. As always, lovely work. Hang on a sec. It looks like Lisa's still trying to connect. I think she's going to try to connect from her phone. Let me just take you off this spotlight real quick here. Bear with us. Alrighty, so up next, we have Francisco Serrano, and he's been published with us in Tint before as well in our Flash section for Flash nonfiction. And he's going to be performing Immigrant Sitcom, and his first language is Spanish. So let me just spotlight him real quick. Alrighty, Francisco, take it away.
All right, hi. So I'm gonna start off with immigrant sitcom, and yeah, when you're an immigrant on the cusp of being American, meaning you came to America early enough, you end up knowing more about here than there, but late enough that the government treats you differently than your classmates, you come to realize your issues and theirs are not the same. Not getting asked to the homecoming dance is not as scary as your family being gone when you come home on the day of the homecoming dance. And if you knew me, you would be asking, why are you worrying so much? You're not a criminal and your family's so nice all the time. American naiveness, still thinking people in uniforms would notice or care about the difference. In a time where television shapes your outlook, I wish there was a TV sitcom about immigrants, a coming of age TV sitcom episode where the 15-year-old learns they cannot get a license or a job or travel abroad after taking French at school and planning their trip with their friends. How will they deal with it? Stay tuned for the next episode. Or like a Mother's Day episode where a Latina woman is asking her 6-year-old son what kind of snacks he wants. And suddenly a white woman approaches her with foam in her mouth, screaming at her, "Go back to your country. Nobody wants you here. Speak English." Then it cuts to the mother putting her child to sleep by giving them a kiss on the forehead, walking to the kitchen, and then silently crying under the one single light bulb. Maybe then America will not look away and finally say, "Aw," along with the live studio audience. Or maybe a lighter take on the immigrant experience, like when 14-year-old Brenda starts working in the same factory her mom works during the summer instead of taking the son by the pool. But it's not so bad because during lunchtime, she sits with the other underage kids working under illegal names. Maybe the audience will want to rewatch them over and over and over like they do with Friends. Maybe it would even be on Disney. Then our children would be children, not baggage, not dirty criminals, not drug dealers. Since people are so tired of the news because it makes them so sad, I think going with the Disney vibe would be so refreshing, right? Maybe we'll get more than one season. In season 2, maybe the main characters deal with not being an all straight A student or valedictorian, but still feels like he matters to this country. In season 3, the immigrant parents go to therapy and heal all the hurt they have inside. In season 4, if we get confirmed for it, it would be cool to see it would be cool to see the immigrant protagonist cry from happiness for once, not out of relief because the worst didn't happen, just pure joy. It could be a great plot twist. I think we should see immigrant experiences on TV screens with lines and plots for people to understand we are robbing generations of their childhood. How will kids deal with normal teenager problems when their moms, dads, daughters, sons, and neighbors are being mistreated, being abused, tormented, and separated without warning, without pity? A theme song will play where a nearly bald white man in a classic dark blue suit cuts the umbilical cord and throws it across the border and says, "Go fetch." And then my next one, it's called Drunk Text, because I think drunk texts are romantic, I think, maybe. I want to be your drunk text, feeling so bold to reach out, only when you're not yourself, feeling vulnerable enough to feel stupid. Take consequences, pride, anger out of your right pocket. There's a smile on my face, as if you were in front of me again since the last time I saw you. Digital romance, 21st century heartbreak. You're so drunk, yet text so perfectly. You're so drunk, yet conscious enough to miss me, to be your 3 a.m. text. Thank you. The only hour you feel nostalgic of a day that was more exciting than today. So comfortable, yet not. To choose to think of someone when you have someone else already. 3 a.m. I only want to sleep if you'll be there. Not 3 a.m. I'm horny, you up text. 3 a.m. Hey, have you been? I know you get those nights too. But most importantly, I want to be your call. The one your fingers and every part of you, bones, cells, and organs, they all tell you you're wrong, except for the heart. And it rings, and it rings, and it rings. And then this one is called Voices in Our Head. And it's just like about like being part of different communities and having different identities and like how that affects your thought process. I have so many voices in my head, not just a little devil or a little angel. For example, currently, I don't want to go to college when my immigrant voice tells me, your parents have given up so much just for that. My American voice responds, I didn't ask them to, and continues, I wish I wasn't in this country. Like returning a gift because you don't like it. My American voice seeing the disappointed look on my mother's face, then selfishly looking away. My immigrant voice seeing the look on in a flashback years later at random, seeing the disillusion on my mother's face, her hurting, so used to silently pulling back tears. And when it comes to winning, my own voice says, enjoy the victory. My immigrant voice says, maybe ask for more. Don't ask, just take. My American voice responds, I am so lost. I know how things should be done, but I see how others do them. I end up doing nothing. I don't know who to listen to, and that's why I can't take others' advice. Advice is so necessary. Where others lack multiple voices in their head, I have too many, yet feel the same way. The other day, my American friend was giving me advice on my issues of being a firstborn Mexican American, or however it is said on the news. My white friend doesn't even know Univision. She wouldn't even know how to pronounce the word right if I were to show her. My white friend asks, how can you love your mother when she treats you like that? Like that being too big of a picture for words, like that being too complicated to be considered love, like that being enough sometimes from where I come from. I always wondered if I would be friends with my mom when she was a kid. My American voice would have told ask for more, but she had no American voice. She only had a niña de un pueblo voice, doing what niñas de pueblos did during her time. Wake up at 6 a.m. to make the masa for her siblings, then run to get to school on time. No American voice for her to tell her parents, no, ask Angel, he's older than me. My American voice always responding back, ay, más al rato, mami, I'll do it later. Doing nothing with my time, her doing more than enough for her siblings, her parents, herself. I now realize this is why my mom sees me as a stranger, because she's mostly heard my American voice. I think she expects a Mexican voice like hers. My American friends wouldn't get it though. She would make my mom's life an agenda, a story to feel more passionate about her women's rights movement, focused on only fighting for other American women, then forgetting a few days later. I know, but she's my mom, is all I say to her. Um, I'm not sure if I have enough, if I have more time. But the last one that I'll be reading is just called Traditions. And this is one of my very first poems that I wrote in my youth. Um, Tradition never put a plate for me at the dinner table. Tradition greeted everyone else at the party except for me. I see the way tradition looks and smiles, but I also see the disgust in their eyes when they do. Tradition uses my name for jokes without asking, uses me for what not to do when all I'm doing is existing. Tradition made everyone feel like my family. Strangers at the grocery store, the kid behind me in class, the family never made me feel good. Tradition makes me feel invited, but only because they had to, not because they wanted me there. I wish they wanted me there. And right when I feel like tradition and I are getting along, I'm blindsided by another joke and I want to scream. But what comes out is a laugh that joins the rest of the laughs. Laugh here, cry at home. That's my tradition. So yeah, thank you guys. And thank you Tint Journal for organizing this because I think it's pretty cool to take poetry digital. So thank you and have a good day wherever, or night, wherever you are.
Thank you, Francisco. And thanks to all of the amazing writers who who read their stories and their poems so far. I'm happy to introduce you again to Kati, who will lighten this up and play some music again for us. So here's Kati again.
The next song I'm going to play is called ODCDC, and then I'm going to play a song which is called God Damn It Bryson. Gave me with nothing on me. Who this hard and want to leave with even less? 1,000 books, no sympathy. All out of wrong crowd. Just another lousy love lost that I happen to bump into on the streets. And I know we have grown apart. Oh, to see you killing me. I know I told this pretty, but to see you killing me. Oh, to see you killing me. I know I told this pretty, but to see you killing me. Elder skeletons at the door say, only tramps like you make lying sound like fun. Where are the arts? Where are the arts? Among the buildings in Wisconsin Avenue. And out this city swallows us. Prison souls forgotten in cathedral days. I could have sworn that one was yours. Oh, to see you killing me. I know where blood is pretty, but to see you killing me. Oh, to see you killing me. I know where blood is pretty, but to see you killing me. Just another lousy love lost that I happen to bump into on the street. And I know we have grown apart. I came here with nothing on me. Who'd have thought that one would leave with even less? Oh, to see you killing me. I know I broke it's pretty, but to see you killing me. Oh, to see you killing me. I know I broke it's pretty, but to see you killing me. Killing me, killing me, killing me. Killing me, killing me, killing me. Oh, to see you killing me. I know I brothers really want to see you killing me. Oh, to see you killing me. I know I brothers really want to see you killing me. Thanks so much. Next song's called God Damn It, Bryson. Tuesday morning, just I realized that I'm sleeping through pretty much what have I eat. Disillusion man is satires their pain for my desperation. Took its toll on you too. You said, darling, oh my dear, did they give ya roofies? I said, darling, oh my dear, they gave me life. Well, Wednesday morning trying to figure out where my money's gone. Back and lost some love that lost thrown away. I was the devil in the night on a death inside. It's yet another awkward portrait of the state of your soul. You were that one who took all over the city, while I was the one running with that fool. Tell me poison, now we can sit out what things you are. Everything is silent till the reasons are there. Ignore the pleasure isn't there in defeat. There was a kind of boat from Boston that's been pocketed out. I was Thursday morning trying to catch your free trade running out of time. To back to France on the empty. Running up the hills and down into the woods, through the pouring rain, making pictures so small that I won't. You were the one who wanna get out of the city, although I one who said a rundown house. One Friday morning trying to come on turns with my dignity staff and my faded body while we not rest. Oh, city speeds and tarmac past, thinking fun for looting and absence of a life on the run. And you are that one who still lives in the city, while I am the one that in a rundown life. But tell me price and I reconsider I would fucking think that you are. Everything is silent till the reasons I did. Ignore the pleasure isn't letting to feed. It wasn't kind of fun from Boston, let's be fucking it out. Hey, I took you out of bag on the shore. Hey, I took you straight into my home. Wasn't a tombstone of still the outfire where the dreams are built. Why one of the well-told stories really got me killed. Now tell me price and now we can sit out back and think you out. Everything is silent till the reasons I did. Ignore the pleasure isn't there in the feed. It wasn't kind of broken from Boston. It wasn't kind of broken from Boston. It wasn't kind of broken from Boston. That's been fucking either. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kati. So up next, by the way, you have a beautiful voice. Up next in our open list slot, someone who hasn't been published with Tint yet, but he's going to be reading some poetry. Let's welcome Milan Vidovic. Let me just spotlight you here. Bear with me, we're learning as we go here. There we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I don't know, since my microphone seems to be mucking about. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the evening so far. I would like to thank Lisa for the opportunity to read here. In case John hasn't mentioned it already, I am Bosnian, but my first language is Serbian, and tonight I will be reading to you two of my poems, About a Rose and Life. About a Rose is what you would call a romantic poem, dealing with the recurring motif of an ideal woman, lover, dear, which is very prevalent in Serbian literature, with such authors as Milan Rakic and Ivan Lupic. Here we go, About a Rose. A harsh rose stands alone in the rain. Facing the north wind, she opposes his disdain. She is a beauty, for her thorns bite. She gives the moon a reason to stay up at night. See her potent smell cure the pauper's pain. Even when he hurts her with might and main, she simply has no personal gain, which puzzles his plain brain, leaving her to face the cold void. She is too unique to simply be destroyed. Even if she weakens and her petals scatter, she is not reduced to the form of matter. In fact, it doesn't matter in what form she is. What matters is sadly, she's not mine, his. He is at the mercy of his wretched fist. He always tries to show him, he just can't see the gist. She is a flower too delicate to be shoved. She doesn't need attendance. She needs to be loved. The sky needs to fall so that she may rise. The top of the world resides in her eyes. She brings me peace when it's needed most. She cannot see me. To her, I'm a ghost. Transparent and distant, yet I'm always there, fulfilling my purpose. Give her good care. Like the earth and the sky into each other we stare. And as the ages pass, I become aware. We share a bond, the path is sealed, until our true emotions are freely revealed. All right? And the following poem is called Five, and it is the first part of a three-part story that I wrote about war. The other two parts are the other two languages that I speak. This particular poem deals with a war general on top of a cliff, reflecting on his past and the atrocities of war, such as underage boys taking part in combat. The imagery proposed in the poem is inspired by the painting of the German romantic artist Caspar David Friedrich and his painting Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. Enjoy. 5. It starts with one breath to clear my head, to climb up swiftly, face the field, free myself from clouds, observe them once instead. They are all but sunny, and rise as the great land's shield. I've never been the kind to spare a thought. Fix are fixed in this heart, as the feet to the rock. Heaven sent from my mother, brought her the joy she sought. Made my father's luck, taste of almonds from the mouth to the sock. Shine me a sign, bring the skyline to my face. I'll shiver less trouble with space. A fountain stands where no eye can see, without a penance on which you can knock, imposed by the years, what was and could be, sighing and dying on the hot clock. Way makes it seem like heaven is there, and night knows only that he fights with air, never flying, reaching for an everglow. How would it be to stop this train? Freeze it like the frame that makes headlines pop, or rather shocks the words back into the brain, gazing at the farmers, wishing we could swap. Won the war, lost the battle. Too many voices made me. Flee from what you see. Law became too poor. Drop, rattle, no more prattle. Strive to thrive. Hide the vernal appearance. Kicks may follow stones, water will block roads. 11 of 11 that will grant you clearance. Fate wants us to set. We rise like the god on roads. Wind to the hive. No eyes there to see it live. Take another breath, boys. Make another dive. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Good night or good day.
Thank you so much, Milan, for joining our Tinted group tonight. I really love your poems. Awesome. So the writer who's up next is Martina Braunegger, and she's actually been with us from our very beginning onward. She's joined our first inaugural issue with a flash fiction piece, which is called Spring Must Be Nice. You can read it on tintjournal.com in the Spring 19 issue. Martina's first language is English, is German, is German. Yeah, and here she is. Let me just briefly switch. So here we go.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Tinted Journal for putting all of this together. I'm so grateful to be part of it as well. I'll be reading one of my rather crazy like fiction pieces today, titled We're All Mad Here. So bear with me on this one. We're all mad here. What are you in for? Nothing. Same. I had a feeling we would become friends. This is a story about insanity. Well, about my attempt to stay sane inside insanity. No, the story about me battling insanity. No, about my victory over the insanity of life. No, still not right or true. It's a story about me. Hi. So buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a happy princess, beautiful as can be. She combined all the attributes one could possibly wish for in a delicate figure. Everybody loved her. I hated her. She was everything I would never be, so I befriended her. I combed her hair, whispered nice things in her ear, and wore the mask of innocence with a smile of a fake friend. She trusted me. Then I started talking to the mirror, filling it with lies. It was easily misled, like a brain-dead parrot. It played its part well and filled the queen's mind with paranoia and freed the not-so-hidden evil in her heart. And so, all my puppets were on stage, dancing for me. The innocent one was killed by the one with the blackened heart, and I lived happily ever after. That was probably a lie. Sometimes it was hard to say what was real and what was not. Everything was such a blur. When you had been caged up like a wild animal for your entire life, you tend to dream yourself away. You start making up stories, even alive. Hard to tell what was real and what was made up, especially when the lies seemed to be so much nicer. I was working on it, or was I? He entered the room and disgust was written all over his face. How I despised this look. I swear, if it weren't for those whips, I'd defeat them in a heartbeat. We all would. We were magical after all, and some of us could do things you wouldn't believe. But the most powerful among us was still me, naturally. There was nothing I couldn't do. I could do whatever they could do. Why? Because I stole their everything. I looked at my roommate, hoping to finally make some sense out of him. They had brought him in yesterday, kicking and screaming. But ever since, there'd been nothing, and the silence was really starting to bug me. So, how do you like it so far? Well, if looks could kill. I had never been any good at breaking the ice, but at least I got his attention. And as long as I kept staring at him, he owed me a response. And I really wanted that response. It's been a blast. Yes, I'd got him talking. Now just keep it nice and casual. Sweet. Nailed it. I looked away and played with the single glass shoe my mother had left me. The only thing that reminded me of her, and it was totally useless. My fingers seemed to always search for it though, especially whenever I felt nervous or uncomfortable. Now I felt both. So what's it like in here? The question I'd been dying to hear. I tried to hide a smile and told him everything. It was okay here, I guess, as long as you didn't look directly at the guards. Fairies were terrifying creatures, and you shouldn't give them any reason to let their rage out on you, stuck-up folk. The others were nice as far as I could tell. We never really got the chance to talk. But I watched them, and my neighbors, I knew, they were watching me too. Most of us were locked up for no real reason, and that made us even angrier. There was Flo in the corner cell, for instance, the quiet freak that mutated once a month into a smelly wolf. A little bit of an attention seeker, if you ask me, but even I had to admit that she was rather scary too. But more importantly, and what I certainly wouldn't tell my new roomie, Flo believed that I was a dangerous witch. Why? Easy. When Flo had first come in, there had only been the two of us for a couple of days, and I had made a habit out of muttering random and nonsensical phrases and making all those weird hand gestures. There was a thing I'd copied from Shally, a strange little girl with flaming red hair. Shally had been here once too, and she had been both scared and scary. She had been obsessed with the fear of being burned at the stake. Never knew where she had gotten that idea from. Crazy girl. But after all, that's what we all ought to be. Crazy and mad. Swell. But what about you? Anything you can do? I suppose sooner or later he had to ask. Didn't mean I had an answer ready. And all I could mumble in that moment was vague and insecure. You'll see. Spoken with an undertone in my voice that hopefully suggested my mysterious and immense power. What about him? He was pointing slightly towards Drake, and I got why he didn't do a clearer gesture. Drake was scary as shit, and I wouldn't want him to know that I was talking about him either. Drake wasn't really one of us. He had killed a bunch of people just for the hell of it, said he got a thrill out of it. That wasn't what his lawyer said though. That one had told everyone that Drake was just crazy and not to be held responsible for his actions. Bullshit, if you ask me. Drake wasn't one of us. He was nothing special, simply evil. Now he made sure everybody knew that a dark voice inside his head had ordered him to kill. He even pretended to talk to it whenever the guards came near, idiot. But they believed him. Guess I'd have to put up with him a bit longer still, but he was useless to me. Maybe that's why I despised him so much. So better not cross him, eh? Yeah, I really wouldn't. And that was that. He turned around and I sensed that he wanted to be left alone. I got that. I had those moments too, but not now. I turned to the brick wall and touched each brick with all the love I had to give. I loved them all equally, almost. I started whispering to them, telling them stories of fair maidens riding towards the sunset with their handsome princes. My roommate gave me a weird look, and so I told him that I could talk to the bricks, which wasn't really a lie, at least not entirely. The other one was watching me. They were all watching me. Every single one of them, the beast, the murderer, and whatever my new roommate was. None of them could take their eyes off me, and I bathed in their admiration. I was born here, and they were just visitors. Plus, they were jealous. Of me and my gift, obviously. Didn't matter which version of my story they knew. The jealousy made them all the same in my eyes. Listen, do you have a sec? How cautious he was, like he was treading on very thin ice. My nails were still clinging to the silent walls, making that shrill sound that makes others cringe and me smile. Sure. I was wondering, can you make them move too? I mean, so that we can get out of here. I'm capable of many things. Yeah, cool. The fairies were coming back. Silent and passive-aggressive as always. They took flow. Only God knew where to, well, God and I. I remember the room very well. That's a true fairy tale in my past. It doesn't have people cutting off their toes or evil queens that want you dead because of your looks. But that doesn't mean it was a piece of cake either. They had done things to me, horrible things. Pain to trigger my magical powers, they used to say. But all they had done was strengthening my hatred for my mother, and my magic was still a no-show. I started to regret the brick thing already. Talking to the bricks in the wall, that's not a real gift. I had to think of something else and fast, but I was running out of ideas. I'd played too many roles over the course of my life, and it was getting harder and harder to find my way back to myself. The web I had been spinning had finally taken hold of me. But after all, nobody had ever claimed that growing up in a gnat house was easy. Hey, listen, there are some other fun things I can do. He turned around and curiosity was written all over his face. It was time to improvise. Well, have you noticed my huge eyes or enormous ears? Yes, now that you mention it. And don't you wonder why my mouth is that big? Sure, he shrugged. I was running out of things to say and was forced to go with the first thought that popped into my head. You want to know? You want to know why I've got these large eyes and ears or that huge mouth? Well, I guess it's all the better to eat you with. I'd have to go through with it then. The show must go on. I really couldn't afford being called a liar. And so I briefly licked my lips before sinking my teeth into his flesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, you can catch Martina's previous work, Spring Must Be Nice, in our Spring 2019 issue, which was our first issue. And that's in our Flash section. So be sure to check that out. And if at any point anybody watching at home is liking what they're seeing, be sure to spread the love in the comment section. We'd love to hear your feedback. So up next, we've got Banu Zan. So she's been published numerous times. She was in our most previous issue with a poem called Zhang Yu 23 from China, which is a beautiful piece. You should check it out in the poetry section. And she's going to be reading some poems from some of her previous collections. She's had quite a few published before, so we're really excited to have her here. So hang on a sec. Let me just get her on the spotlight. And you're on.
Hello. Thank you, Tinted Journal, Lisa, John, and huge thanks to also my fellow poets and readers tonight. And big love to everyone who's watching. So I'm going to start with sharing some poems from the two poetry collections that I have. And then at the end, I will also read the piece that was published in Tint. I start from Songs of Exile with the poem Words number 3. O word, I'm banished to you from the land of nonverbal blood. All I knew, non-words, signifying nothing. We talk to the difference of voices, and I'm forever silent. Language is the music my body is playing. I was not made for this melody, nor the one before. I'm forever in doubt. And when I'm journeying to the other, the language does not accompany me. I'm in love with misunderstanding. I look the words in the eyes and invoke them. There is no response. Language is a silent philosopher, and I'm an articulate silence. My consonants, vowel poetry. The next piece from Songs of Exile I'm going to share with you is Iran. You know, Iran is a country, but what some of you might not know is that Iran is also a first name for women in Iran. I am forced, stripped down to a handful of dust, the waves of my hair shorn, hands and feet tied down to Procrustean borders of subjection, my vagina bleeding in explosions of testosterone. I'm witness to my archetypal nightmare, my sons lusting after me in incestuous copulations of power, my daughters offering me to rapists as a scapegoat. I'm alluring to invaders who demand fake orgasmic pleasure in denial of pain, a prostitute smile I cannot afford, thirsting after my dark juices to keep their industrious palaces going. No one hears me in this gang rape. And when mock trials are staged, I'm called to testify against myself. I'm a terrorist to colonialists. I terrify ugliness with independent beauty. Accused of profanity, I dance lifeless on sacred gallows. Like Tahmine, I have bedded heroes who have slain the young. Like Jocasta, I have bedded heroes who have slain the old. And this is not my first time. I'm woman with history. You, who stand in line waiting for your turn. You cannot maintain that erection forever. The next piece is called Sister. It is dedicated to my sister Zahra, to whom the whole book is dedicated as well. Sister, oh sister, how to sister you. How to run in your veins as blue as red. How to voice your birth, to beat your heart, to book your stanza. How to wear your years, to erect your arch, to ground you. How to dig your life, to stone amnesia. Sister, oh sister, how to spring your winter. The last poem I'm going to share from Songs of Exile with you is called Battle of Books. Mein Kampf was not Mein Kampf, nor was it yours, remember? We had books back then in sacred grief. Every page cut through our page, every page held us together. In the beginning, there was no beginning. In the beginning, there was the end. We forgot to read with wuzu. We forgot to read by the wall. The sea cannot see for the bombs in its eyes. The cloud is no cover for sleep. Birds have lost the right to land. Your book betrays the beginning. Mine betrays the end. No wonder the land is so rich. Blood is the best water. Life is an explosive jacket as I stand between you and broken tablets. Faith was our fall on this land we fight over. This is not henna on our hands. These are not our hands. What is love if it doesn't kill? And don't we love? Jesus was a Jew. Muhammad was a pagan. Moses washed his hands off the line where an eye was for an eye. Who is your God now? And who is mine? Is it books that divide us, or is it us who divide us? We gored in the name of God, the victor and the victim, the author we didn't read. We chanted in our name, Allahu Akbar, God is greater. Allahu Akbar, you are greater. Allahu Akbar, I am greater, greater than a struggle, greater than love, greater than greatest books. In the beginning, there was no beginning. Let there be light in the end. From the second collection, Letters to My Father, which I wrote after my father passed away, I'm sharing two letters. They're numbered 12. Nightmares are nameless. In dreams you named me. Images fall for words, unlike my likeness. Your eyes, the azal of the abad. I lost the taste of embrace in self-love. I wish I had shared you with me against roads. You see, the world is missing a seer. Names are accusations. I name you anonymous. Your clay too wet for my desert. I have run out of names. Don't show these to my mother. She would think I'm eloping with you. Number 36 from Letters to My Father. No sea will see you drowned in dirges. No rivers reach you in tears. You saved yourself from the balm of pain. The leaves wrote you as the stem writes the sap. I'm no boat, cannot float on adventure. I'm a patient stone no one talks to. I melt into the lava of lines. A seabird, I fly into your jet and color the sky. Take this hand and burn the ocean. Torture is the oranda. I'm a magician of lands foreign to my blood. A line forgetting the pen, the braille of life. And I end with Zhang Yu, 23, from China. This came out of my experience as an ESL teacher. You look 16, are not fluent in Cantonese or Mandarin. Students take a long time translating my 2-word questions for you. Your eyes are still lost. You don't bring lunch. Use every scrap of newspaper I bring to class. Still, after 2 months, you can't answer this question. How are you today? But you know the language of smiles. I hear your parents sent you over so they can come after. They didn't give you a sharp mind. Now, like the gods of yesterday, they are withdrawing their love because you don't have what they haven't given you. After lunch break, your head is on the desk. Your ears pounding with music from the land that rejected you. I see this is not new to you. Still, I wish you could read this someday to see that someone saw. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Banu, for joining Tint tonight. It was really an honor having you with us. And it's actually crazy how time is flying. We're about to face our last writer for tonight. So to all of our audience guests, thank you so much for joining. There's only a few minutes left if you want to catch a bookmark. Be sure to send the right answer to the question how many nationalities we've already published to our email address, which is info@tintjournal.com before the reading ends. So yeah. And now I have the pleasure to introduce the last of our performing writers tonight. His name is Richard Cho. His first language is Korean, and he's been published in Tint already with a flash fiction piece called The Brightest One in our second issue in fall 19. So enjoy Richard's reading now.
Hello, my name is Richard. I want to thank Tint Journal very much for giving me this opportunity to read at the Tint reading. So I'm gonna read short fiction. It's still a work in progress. I'm gonna read the first 3 pages. I've written 14 pages so far. And it's titled Literature Behind Bars. At the first meeting of the creative writing class here at UC Berkeley, the professor said that nowadays, the line between the real and fiction has blurred. Look into your past and fictionalize the experience that's yours and yours alone, she added. I looked around the classroom and surveyed the faces. All these kids looked just like what they were, kids. Probably still in their late teens, born and raised in a posh household, admitted swiftly to this prestigious university after their high school years busy with SAT tutoring and extracurricular activities. Their parents must have cheered when their name was called on a graduation ceremony. I never knew my father. Mom was a kid herself when she had me. We never had enough money, so I learned to steal. In fact, my earliest memory is that of my mom smuggling fruits and packaged frozen goods into my raggedy stroller. They made a hard reach under me, and I had to continually fidget around on my seat. But complaining meant going hungry, so I kept quiet. When I was 4, she began teaching me the ways of theft. From a petty thief, I promoted myself naturally as I grow up to a drug dealer, a carjacker, and an occasional thug. Curiosity being my trait, I dabbled in various criminal delinquencies. I never specialized in one, but was passably good at many. You are like a librarian, the correctional librarian I had met in prison once told me. Librarians are generalists. Their knowledge is broad, not just one thing in depth, he said with a cautious laugh. Professor had us do a mapping of a potential story, and an hour flew by while I was staring at a blank lined paper. As I was walking out of the classroom, a hefty man accosted me. He had a crew-cut graying hair and a swirling pattern of tattoos sneaking out from his short sleeves and neckline, pervading his dark neck and arms. You are Thomas, right? He had a deep voice. I stopped in my track and met his eyes. I'm JK. That's what people have been calling me inside. Real name's John. You got a minute? As we walked to the Free Speech Cafe on campus, he told me that he was like me, a former juvenile and a long-time inmate, but someone who decided once and for all never to go back to the shithole, as he put it. He ordered 2 cups of iced Americano without asking me what I wanted and paid for them himself. We sat down. You look a bit too skinny to be a gangbanger. What were you in for? He asked. What's this about? I asked. He sat back, scanned me from head to toe, pulled a pompous grin that flashed 2 gold teeth, and began to talk, with a tone and diction different from how he had spoken until now. He put weight on his words by pausing after each sentence and talked about how there were more people who could turn out like us, a former inmate getting college education, and he and his buddy, who had also been an inmate, had started a project called Underground Scholars Initiative. He wanted my help. He needed more representatives. I'm old now, hitting 40 soon. You are good looking and young, which might have been a disadvantage inside. Besides, we need more people like you. Too many of us are black or brown. Anyways, what do you say? I took some time to answer. I don't know. I don't know if I'm in a situation to help others. I can barely help myself. Take some time to think about it. We can make a real difference. Look back on your past. Think about why you repeated your prison spell. He noisily sipped the last wedges of his coffee with a straw, stood up, saluted like an army officer, and left. What a day. Two people I've never met before urging me to look back on my past within a span of just a couple hours. The deed I promised myself never to do as I was stepping away from the metal gate. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. Still 4 hours to kill before dinner with Diana. Our phone conversation last night was awkward, hence brief. She asked me how I had been, if I was enjoying school, who I was living with, and my replies were noticeably curt. Her voice on the phone had more ethereal quality than her in-person voice, which I had last heard a year ago. She suggested dinner together. It was to be our first time meeting outside. I went into the Doe Memorial Library and finished the first 2 pages of my short fiction. I wrote about the first class session and the gangly man who bought us each a cup of Americano. Diana and I met at a restaurant near the Oakland Public Library on the 14th Street. She wanted to show me something after our dinner. I took the bus and arrived half an hour early, focusing on the monotony of my breathing, and when she approached the table, her eyes tired, yet her smile like a light of the moon on a dark night, I almost didn't recognize her. She was big and bloated in a sky blue maternity dress. She said she might be due anytime soon, even at this moment, and giggled, turning her head to hide her shy laugh, as was her habit. She sat down opposite me and took out a magazine from her bag. A hand laid on a bulged stomach had a ring on its 4th finger. The other hand held the 3rd issue of Literature Behind Bars. She passed it to me. The magazine consisted of about 50 shiny white pages and had a glossy cover, which depicted a bunch of men in inmate uniforms striking defiant poses between a barbed wire fence and a stone wall. The journal looked legit, much better than how the previous 2 issues had looked. Thomas, all the bookstores in San Francisco, even shops like Barnes & Noble, sell this in their magazine racks now. They should be at Berkeley as well. Have you seen it there by any chance? She flipped the first page and pointed to the part where my name was listed next to the titles of co-founder, co-editor, and the 4 poems. Sorry to ask abruptly, but why did you suddenly quit teaching? My question was a stone disturbing the calm surface of water. She looked taken aback, blinked a few times, retrieved her widened eyes and said, my fiance's family didn't like it. They thought it was too dangerous. I know that I owed you an explanation, but I knew you were coming out soon. I'm sorry. I didn't respond and merely looked at her, wasn't urging her to go on. I just didn't know what to say. Even though I was looking at her face, I was not seeing it. Featureless, she continued. I worked hard on putting out our 3rd issue together, talking to the press and designing the pages. And I always thought of you. Somehow, visiting you after I quit didn't make sense. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Yeah, so we've reached the very end. Well, not the very, very end, but kind of the writer's end of this night. I guess this is the time when I want to thank just everyone who's been involved in the organization of this reading. It's been quite a bit of work to put it from a physical event to an online event, and even to exceed it to a festival. So whoever in the audience, if you enjoyed what you saw tonight, make sure to also join us tomorrow. We'll begin at 6 p.m. European Standard Time. Same channel, different writers. I hope it's going to be just as great as today again. Yeah, I definitely also want to thank John, our poetry editor, for jumping in and doing an amazing part in the moderation of this whole event. Thanks to you. And yeah, also, if you enjoy what you saw tonight, make sure to jump by at patreon.com/tintjournal or at Ko-Fi. You can support us there, subscribe to us. You know, it's a free event. So if you liked it, we'll be grateful if you also check out our different websites. All right, so there's not much more to say from me. I want to thank all the writers who read the amazing pieces tonight and gave us such a wonderful glimpse into their writers' lives. So I guess because there's no clapping from the audience, I'll just clap over here. It's really been amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, the last word, or the last musical word, is again up to our musician for tonight. So enjoy your evening. Here's Kadi, and thanks for joining Tint tonight.
Thanks, Lisa. Congrats everyone on your brilliant texts. I really enjoyed them. It was beautiful. And also thanks Tint Journal for including me in this beautiful event. The last song I'm gonna play is called The Road Beneath My Feet. Enjoy. Leave my home in Austria, following the road beneath my feet. Leave my home in Austria, following the road beneath my feet. That's heavy. Leave my friends and family, knowing that the truth can still be found. Leave my friends and family, knowing that the truth can still be found. Beneath that ground. Now I ain't coming home, for I am not alone. Leave my home in Austria, following the road beneath my feet. Leave my home in Austria, following the road beneath my feet. But that's heavy. Leave my friends and family, knowing that the truth can still be found. Leave my friends and family, knowing that the truth can still be found. Beneath that ground. Now I ain't coming home, for I am not alone. Father, I will leave this place as people never wanna be, just stay. Father, I will leave this place as people never wanna be, just stay. That's why I stray. I don't fight for freedom, yeah, freedom's just another word for loss. Thank you so much.